Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Mental Health Community Collaborative put on by Texas State University's Translational Health Research Center. My name is Cody Gould. I'll be hosting you all today. So about today's meeting. Today's session is about building community resilience before the crisis. We know that many of you are involved in mental health already and may know a lot of what this information has in store for us. But with that being said, we hope that that today will give you some talking points and some conversation starters, potentially a new perspective in regards to this topic. And that way you can bring back this conversation to community members, family members, or anyone who might be interested about mental health in crises that you possibly could have. So we're honored to be joined by Alyssa Ramirez of the American Red Cross. She's a coordinator for the American Red Cross within the Community Adaptation Program, specifically within Hays County. And we are also joined by Diana Anzaldua. I practiced and we still didn't do great, but I'll get a redo later. She's the founder and interim executive director of Contigo Wellness. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Alyssa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and welcome to Building Community Resilience Before the Crisis. We'll be discussing today how the American Red Cross is working to transform communities across the nation and specifically here in Hays County. So, a little bit of background as to why the Community Adaptation Program was born, and we call it CAP for short. So, if you hear me say that later on, that's what that means. But we are a brand new initiative from the Red Cross. Our program has been in existence for about 2.5 years. And this slide gives some context as to why we were created in the first place. So over the last 10 years, the number of billion-dollar disasters in the United States has increased by 70%. And that has caused more than 8.5 million people to be displaced from their homes. In the past 5 years, we have seen more Category 4 and 5 hurricanes hit landfall than we have seen in the previous 50 years combined. And so for the Red Cross, that means in the United States, we have had nearly twice as many relief operations for major disasters than we did a decade ago. I would like to mention here too that our volunteers, which make up 90% of our workforce, used to deploy for major relief operations about once every 3 months. That cadence is now about once every 10 days and is projected to be one in every 3 days soon. So across the nation, there are 18 counties that have a CAP team. And actually, there's an asterisk there because we are forming one more team, and that's not represented on the map yet, and that is in New Hanover County in North Carolina. So there are going to be 19 teams across the nation represented by the stars here. We are three people teams, so we're comprised of one manager and two coordinators in each of these counties. And as you can see, Hays County is one of two counties in the state of Texas with a CAP team. And so there are different criteria that the Red Cross identified in choosing these counties. One being that there is an increase of risk for disaster. Here in Hays County, those two disaster risks, main risks, are flooding and fire. And we are all hired locally within our county, meaning we all live near in the counties that we serve. So the CAP program targets what we call the three H's. When looking at the social determinants of health, the Red Cross identified these three factors that seem to be the major drivers of displacement after disasters. And those are hunger, housing, and health, both physical and mental health. And so that those are the three areas that our CAP teams specifically work in. Today, this is focused on mental health, and I will tell you guys how that kind of fits into our program. So currently, we were actually, there's an X kind of there in that number, because we just got a message today about the number of hyperlocal partners across the nation. So we actually now are at the 300 mark for official partners with the community adaptation program. So that's across our 18 counties. We have more than 300 community adaptation program resilience projects underway, and that those projects are projected to serve or touch over 300,000 people across the U.S. How we partner, we have a couple of different ways that we partner. First, we're really focused on hyper-local partner organizations. Those organizations can be 501(c)(3)s or 501(c)(19)s. And or we can also have strategic partners. Those are bigger organizations, maybe school districts or health departments. They could even be for-profit businesses. Currently in Hays County, we have about 20 partners that are either signed MOUs or in the pipeline. And in order for those partners to be considered, they have to provide services currently around one of the three H's, or some orgs obviously work with more than just one H. They have to sign an MOU with us that basically just states that they are willing to help the community that they serve during a disaster, should they have the ability. And we can kind of share resources, the American Red Cross, with these organizations to help serve the community during times of need. And these hyper local organizations being nonprofits, or again, the 501(c)(19)s, which we currently have a couple of VFW organizations that are our partners that fall under that umbrella. They are eligible for what we call enhancements. These enhancements serve to increase our three C's. And so these are the C's for the organizations, which are capability, capacity, and continuity. And so that can look a few different ways. It could either be American Red Cross provided training. We could also provide subject matter experts to come in and do some training for the organization or for the communities that they serve. The other big one is equipment or material procurement. And so that's one that we'll talk about today with our current partner. And then we also ask that these partners be a part of what we are calling the Hays Resilience Network. And that piece is really the connecting piece where we put together all of our signed partners and let them kind of form their own relationships to help serve and share resources, both that are provided by us and things that they are already doing in their everyday operations. And so we have some cool examples of how we are kind of building that network and working together already here in Hays County. So, our team has taken the ABCD approach to understanding what the needs in the community are, and that stands for asset-based community development. So instead of just looking at, the data and the needs assessments and the risks that we know exist in the community and other organizations have put together, that data is very important to us. And a lot of that data is used to identify these counties in the first place. But we wanted to hear what the people of Hayes County are really looking for when it comes to support in these three H's and beyond. And so we have developed a strategy to host listening sessions throughout the county. So typically, we partner with one of our partner organizations and we set up tables and questions at their existing events. So there are a few questions that we ask. You can see on that first picture here. We have a risk scale where we ask people how prepared they feel about different weather risks. We ask them, how can we help you prepare? Is there anything that you really would need or like to see? And then one of our big questions, if money aside, if money wasn't an issue, what is your biggest dream for your community? And that has really helped steer what initiatives and what type of resources and what type of organizations we're looking to support. And that is another question that we ask. What organizations do you or your family go to for support or for resources or information? And so we've prepared, we have over 1,200 responses that have come from all different areas of Hayes County. And we've mapped that data to look at what are some common themes, what are recurring themes that people are asking for, what are their dreams for their community. And in every single listening session that we have hosted, mental health, you can see from that post-it note right there, mental health awareness and mental health resources is something that we have seen for every dream. At any time we ask that question, mental health awareness comes up in the county. And so that's really where we have decided to focus some time and attention to. So enter Contigo Wellness, right? Once we started, hearing this directly from the community, while we all know in this space that mental health awareness and resources are in need, to actually hear it come from people in the community was like, okay, this needs to be top of mind, right? And so Contigo Wellness is an organization, a nonprofit organization focused on destigmatizing mental health resources, specifically in BIPOC communities. And so they have graciously partnered with us in our enhancements. So what our program is providing is to really increase Contigo Wellness's capacity to offer services in Hayes County. And so the first part, and Diana is here to talk about their work specifically, but part of the first step in our enhancement was getting out a mural, this beautiful mural that you see here. It's at 201 South LBJ, and it's part of their public information campaign to help destigmatize mental health in communities. And so there's also a QR code at the top of that mural that links directly to Contigo's website, where you can find resources. And that was just the first step in our enhancement, in our partnership with Contigo Wellness. And at the mural reveal, that's the other picture there. Contigo brought resources. They already had existing resources, which were laptops that also provided 3 months of free therapy, giving people that access to not only bridge the digital divide, but also, therapy for people that may not otherwise be able to access it. And so Diana will talk more about these pillars of their organization here in a little bit. Another part of what our program is able to provide, when talking with Contigo Wellness, we said, what is it that you would like to do? Where would you like your impact to be here in Hays County? And immediately it was community wellness, right? And this is another pillar of the work that they do. And so our program has been able to procure the wellness activities and these events for the county, or throughout the county, rather. The first one being with the Women's Wellness event, and that happened on March 30th. And you can see a picture here of the lovely participants. And that was hosted at one of our other partners' location, Centro Hispano, which is here in San Marcos. And it offered just an array of available resources for these women to partake in on a Sunday afternoon. I was there as well, and I can say from personal experience that it was so moving and so impactful. And the feedback that we have gotten and from the staff at Central has just been tremendous and continues to show us that people in our community are really looking for these types of opportunities. And so one of the next events that is happening is in Kyle. It's the men's wellness event that is actually this month on May 31st. And again, I'll let Diana, she'll explain more about kind of why these events, right? Why this type of structure. But we are trying to spread the love around. The men's wellness event is actually taking place at one of our other partners location, and that's the Kyle VFW. And so we know what the importance of mental health in veteran communities, but this event is open to everyone. And so just being able to bridge those connections to help all of our partner organizations get the resources they need is really, really key. So earlier, I discussed that we ask all of our partners to be part of the Hays Resilience Network. And so this is a picture of our first and only so far meeting with the Resilience Network. And within that meeting, there were lots of connections that were made, and we saw this during the cold weather, when our partners were sharing resources with one another. We saw it during the fires out in the Buda Kyle area. We've seen it now already during this heat wave that just happened last week. And at one of our other kind of gatherings is where Diana was able to connect with the Kyle VFW to kind of to start planting the seeds of this men's wellness event. And so it's been really exciting. Our partners are doing really great work, and we are just hoping to continue to amplify their work. But also, and this is where everyone on this call comes into play, is that we are continuing to identify partners. And so one part that I didn't say earlier is our program, our we are in our respective counties doing this specific type of work for 2 years. And so we are coming up on our 1 year anniversary, which means we will have one more year of funding that is Hays County focused for all of these different types of initiatives. So if I would feel that most people on this call today are working in the mental health space, but if you are working in any of the three H's, housing, hunger, or health, I would love to connect with you. Our team is going to continue to identify partners and understand how it is that we can best support the work that you are doing so that we can build resilience in our community and make sure that the people here in Hays County have these resources available to them at all times so that during disasters, they are able to help one another. They are able to activate when they see fit, and we are increasing the overall resilience in our community. So, with that, I will pass it over to Diana to talk more about Contigo Wellness and the work that she's doing.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Thank you, Cody and Shelby of Texas State. Such an honor to be here this month for Mental Health Awareness Month. This is a really important month and, a month that I really like to talk. Well, I always like to talk about mental health, but specifically this month, right? So a little bit about me. Diana Anzaldua. I'm a licensed clinical social worker supervisor, also psychosomatic therapist. I do a lot of body-based work and really trying to teach people about the important connection between the brain and the body. So I got my master's from UT in social work. I founded a trauma center, and just to kind of share a little bit too. I grew up in a really small rural town in East Texas where stigma and accessibility to mental health was not it was just not something that we talked about. And so this work that I do is very personal to me. And so when we connected to Hays County with the American Red Cross and the Community Adaptation Program, I was really excited to move into this space where there is very limited resource, right, in this county. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about that. Founded Contigo Wellness 5 years ago, well, almost 6 years now. And it was really due to, the lack of awareness of the stigma that exists within the mental health communities. And just like the accessibility and equity to in historically marginalized communities. There's a little bit more about me. I mean, I've been really busy with all of the work that I've been doing over the last several years, and and I'm currently in a PhD program that's focused on community psychology. Okay, next, thank you. So back to these murals that Alyssa talked about. Our biggest thing is destigmatization of mental health, right? And even though we're post-pandemic, the stigma is less prevalent now because we've been talking about it so frequently, but it still exists, right? And that's one of the biggest things I think when I think back to my childhood, and not to get too much into my childhood, but a lot of the men in my family, and I'm a sixth generation on my dad's side of the family that have been in Texas, right? And most of the men in my family have passed away early, and it likely due to a lot of trauma and stress, again, in these rural towns, right, where there's not a lot of access. So the stigma was very prevalent within my family. And that, again, is why, I like to talk about mental health, to really normalize it. And so with these murals, it really connects people to not only like their community, right, through the art, through culture, but also it's important for us to have that recognition within the communities, within these marginalized communities that really speak to, why they matter. And so this mural, Tu importas, means you matter. And it's another really beautiful way to say, like, if I can honor my mental health, right, then I can show up for other people. And so this is a one mural. We have actually 4 all over Central Texas. And so we started here in Austin, and throughout our lifetime here in the last 6 years, almost 6 years, we have served over 250,000 people in direct and non-direct work. But again, it's really helping people to see like, hey, you matter and your mental health matters. So the destigmatization part is really important. We've been able to go into the community, meet people where they are. We've put on mental health focused South by Southwest events. We put on art events. We put on again, these murals. We were able to, if we look over, to the next photo, their accessibility, right? And like, how do we help people to get the access and care that they need, right? How do we look at equity within these communities and really help people bridge that gap that's there? So the destigmatization efforts go hand in hand with the accessibility and equity piece. Thank you. And so again, looking at community wellness, right? So it's not only individual work that we're doing, but it's also community. How are we building community? How are we healing together? Because that's a really big part of mental wellness, right? Is not just ourselves, but it's also us in community with other people, right? How are we co-regulating with others? How are we healing with other people? And I always say to people, like when I heal, I can offer my healing to you, right? And if we did that, if we all took that initiative, then we would be in healthier communities, right? And so that's kind of the idea here, is that we've been doing a lot of free community events that are, this one specifically was focused on women because it was Women's History Month, and we tried to tie that together. But we also have a men's event, right? In June, starting June 1st is Men's Health Month. So again, how are we creating a space where men can go and heal? Because men need their own space too, right? And we talked a little bit about that at the women's event, about how, just culturally, there is constructs within the male and female populations. And so, yeah, so the men's wellness event that's coming up, hopefully you all can see the QR, but if you want to scan that, it's a free event. We'll be giving out wellness kits, which is another big thing that we, part of our initiative was to give out wellness kits, right? So we're educating people, because a lot of this work is preventative. We've been seeing all of these tornadoes that are happening across our country that have not normally happened, right? And so thinking about the mental health that people are going to be experiencing, and like Alyssa talked about, the stats, we're only going to continue to see the devastation of our lands continue, right? And so that also means our mental health. So because mental health is connected to everything, it's really important that we're looking at the preventative care, and we're educating people on why it's important that they focus on their mental health. What are the tools and resources that they can utilize during these moments? And then again, creating that access for people, right? And so we have these wellness kits that we've been giving out to people with tips on and strategies on, really quickly, what if I'm in a moment and I'm like having a panic attack, what can I do in that moment, right? And we're teaching people, we're educating people. And so that's part of our work that we're doing in Hays County, is really to connect people to that care that they need. And then, yeah, okay, next slide. Okay, and so really quick, I wanted to talk about a little case study that we've done. And so we have worked with so many people over the last several years, and really we've had some beautiful stories, and people have shared their progress with us. But this particular client, we'll call her Alex for confidentiality purposes. She was 17 and a half, and that's important. When I've done a lot of work over the last 16 years in clinical work, and we used to always say, well, how old is the child in relation to almost being 18, right? So we used the half mark. So she was 17 and a half when she came to us, self-identified as Latinx in high school, first gen, and we were referred to her from her counselor. And so because this client was presenting with a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, with suicide ideation without a plan, and that was really important for us to notice, and just really reporting feeling numb and unsafe. And so, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So immediately, we did a safety plan. And again, if we're working with someone who is actively having suicide ideation, we really need to look at a crisis plan and see whether or not they're even able to participate in clinical counseling, right, in outpatient. And so we did the intake, and after learning about the services with us, we contacted her parent, and within 48 hours, we were able to get Alex into a virtual intake session with a bilingual trauma-informed therapist who specialized working with teens. And then we created that safety plan for them, right? And really looking at grounding and strategies for navigating and managing the panic attacks that were coming up, that were also like fueling this ideation of like, this is overwhelming, I don't want to be here, right? And so really looking at how we could help bring them some relief. And then, so introduce them to somatic check-in tools to regulate their anxiety, and then also brought mom into some of the sessions where we could focus on trauma-informed parenting and really teaching and educating what mom was able to do within the family dynamic. And then next. Okay. And so after 3 weeks, Alex's panic attacks reduced by 70%. And their self-advocacy skills were activated. They had improved sleep and school engagement. They had increased outlook on life. They got a job, and they were so excited to share all of their achievements that were happening within that 3-week period. And really, we were able to connect them to community for ongoing support. And one of the things that Alex said was, Contigo Wellness gave me the tools and the people that I didn't know I needed, and I'm not alone anymore. And so this is just one of many stories that we have had in working with people who have, again, just like who've never been in therapy, who it was their first time, finding someone who looks like them, who spoke the language that they speak, right? It was really important for them to start that journey. And so this particular client was very excited to share all of her progress and growth with us. And so, so that's a little bit about the work. One of many stories that we've been able to work with in Hays County. And then next. And so that's pretty much it. Again, I don't know if you all have any questions. Thank you again for the space.